Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Using Universal Design for Learning to Enhance Information Literacy Programs Online and in the Library, organized by Information Literacy Section and Library Services People with Special Needs. My name is Misako Nomura. I'm today's moderator. And I'm happy to inform you that more than 500 people registered for our webinar. What a big number. Before starting, I'd like to talk about housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded. We will post it afterwards at the IFLA LSN website. Presentation of speakers for today are already available at the same site. During the webinar, ask a question using QA, and please send a message or a comment using chat feature. Live captioning is available. Click on the CC icon in the toolbar. You can change text size if you wish. Now I would like to hand over to Chair of Information Literacy Section, Dr. Min Cho, who will make a welcome speech. Dr. Cho, please.
All right, good afternoon or good evening, everyone from all over the world, near and far. My name is Min Cho. I'm the Chair of Information Literacy Section. On behalf of Nancy Bolt, Chair of LSN, and myself, I welcome you all to join us in this webinar. Information literacy is a set of critical thinking and research skills that enable individuals to effectively locate, evaluate, and use information they need. One of the goals of our section is to help all library users become lifelong learners with information literacy skills that will enable them to thrive in a constantly changing world. And in this webinar, we collaborate with LSN section to explore ideas and tools that for inclusive and accessible information literacy services to people with physical, learning, or other kinds of disabilities, and also to people who encounter learning barriers due to their social, economic, and cultural backgrounds. We organized this webinar in the belief that the framework of universal design for learning is useful for the development of accessible and inclusive instructions and training programs for all library types, either in online or in-person format to meet learning needs of all users. Now let me introduce our three speakers for today. Dr. Gigi Mohammed is a university professor in instructional design. She is well-versed in UDL framework and is also an expert in technology integration into instruction. Today, she will present Universal Design for Learning and Information Literacy. Caroline Smith is an inclusive services consultant in the state library system. We will learn from her expertise in accessible guidelines and assistive technologies for library instruction programs. Her presentation today is Universal Design, Making Information Literacy Accessible. Renee Grassi is a youth services manager in Dakota County Library in Minnesota, USA. She will demonstrate the advantages of universal design for public libraries and also share best practices for applying universal design for library programs and services. Now, let's give a round of welcome applause to our three presenters. starting with Dr. Gigi Muhammad. Gigi.
I will share my screen.
Yes, please.
All right, thank you, Min, for the lovely introduction. It is my pleasure to be here. I thank our audience for giving their time and attending today's webinar. And I hope you, your families, and loved ones are safe and healthy. Universal Design for Learning framework is an essential component of my instructional design courses. And now, because of COVID-19 pandemic and remote learning, issues such as digital equity are on the front page. This makes UDL even more relevant. According to the Center for Applied Special Technology, CAST, Universal Design for Learning principles diverts the focus from student disability to the curriculum disability. When we eliminate barriers in the design of learning environments, it will lead to better learning outcomes of the diverse populations of learners in today's classrooms. UDL addresses 3 areas of learning that deal with recognition, skills and strategies, motivation and prioritizing, or in other words, the what, how, and why of learning. The main focus of UDL is to maximize learning. We do that by taking into consideration every student's background, interests, strengths, and abilities. According to the Association of College and Research Libraries, an information literate individual can do 5 things. 1, determine the extent of information needed. That includes being able to identify the potential sources for that information. 2, access the needed information effectively and efficiently, and be able to design effective search strategies. 3, evaluate information and its sources critically, and be able to summarize the main ideas. 4, incorporate selected information into one's knowledge base and accomplish a specific purpose. This means applying prior knowledge to the planning of a particular product and combine that with the new information to produce something original. 5, understand the economic, legal, and social issues surrounding the use of information. Also access and use that information ethically and legally. Let's talk about how to apply UDL principle to each of these abilities. I will talk about the possible barriers, the solution, and technology application for each. Most of these strategies work for both face-to-face and remote learning. Determining information needs. Some learners struggle to develop insights into main ideas that form research questions. They find it difficult to grasp some of the concepts being read. Introducing the assignment in a form of an open-ended question only could be problematic. I'm saying that because some students work best when they have a strict routine, while others like to be more spontaneous. What are the solutions? Provide multiple entry points to a lesson and optional pathways into the content. For example, exploring big ideas through artwork, literature, film, and media. Open the floor for group discussion and sharing of ideas. Introduce graduated scaffolding. Organizing information can be quite challenging, especially when learners are asked to do so without prompts to help them understand what key points are. For grade school students, a look around you exercise may be helpful. You can say, look around you, find one thing in your immediate field of view that you can't explain. What is that you don't understand about that thing? And what is it that you need to find out that can make you understand it? Another example I used for my AP research courses is to give students a template. That template can help them form research questions, a fill in the blanks template. There is a problem with blank. This problem has negatively impacted blank people or areas because blank. A possible cause of this problem is blank. Perhaps a study which investigates blank could be the solution. Technology gives us many opportunities to customize education to meet individual needs, whether we teach face-to-face or remotely. Some of the tech tools I found to be helpful is Microsoft OneNote. It is a note-taking application. Think of it as the digital version of a physical notebook. It allows for multi-user collaboration. It gathers users' notes, drawings, screen clippings. They can even add recorded comments. Notes can be shared with other OneNote users over the internet. Mind Maps is a digital graphic organizer app. It helps students visualize ideas, make charts and diagrams. I would also like to mention Chrome Accessibility Extension. It helps students to create their ideal browsing experience, tailored to their own individual abilities and preferences. There are many extensions such as zooming feature, read aloud, dark mode. There is an extension called the Mercury Reader that clears away the clutter from all of the articles they read online. The need to access to needed information. Using one format to present information forces students to conform to its parameters. Also, the layout and the volume of information presented can overwhelm students and cause information overload. These barriers can affect comprehension, visual awareness, and working memories. Solutions: present instruction in more than one format, such as text, images, audio, and video. Identify critical information related to the instructional goals, such as highlight or repeat key search strategies. Model search strategies avoiding jargon, known only to practitioners. We know what OPAC, Boolean operators, interlibrary loans are, but our students might not. If designing a LibGuide, use a web accessibility checker tool, such as WAVE at webaim.org. For technology, use databases that have embedded features such as dictionaries, note-taking, and read aloud. One example is Wordbook Online, which is provides read aloud feature that lets students choose a male or a female voice and the speed. It also has translation features that and a text size changer. Of course, Google Translate is a free online language translation program. It translates web pages to other languages. It is available as a desktop application, a mobile app, and can be used on and offline. Evaluate information critically. The key to developing good comprehension skills is the ability to detect core concepts and to understand how the supporting details fit into a larger conceptual framework. It takes effort. What do we do? Create guides for students to self-assess. Maybe add some visuals to guide their comprehension skills, such as a Getting Started guide or Assess My Work guide. Support decoding of text using acronyms could be a good idea. For my research class, I use the acronym PARC, P-A-A-R-C, for information evaluation. My students chose to arrange it differently, starting with C-R-A-A-P. And since they are not sequential, I let them. Anatomy drives engagement according to UDL. They owned it. It stands for purpose, accuracy, authority, relevance, and currency. Unlock background knowledge to create motivation. Background knowledge is the residue of all the life experiences people have. It is the glue that connects new information to the old to make sense of new ideas. Consider a lesson in U.S. history on Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad. Some student will envision the Underground Railroad as a system of railroad tracks that goes from somewhere in the south to somewhere in the north. For technology application, I suggest Google Forms. It's a free survey tool that is part of the G Suite that allows collecting information from users. It could be used before instruction to survey students' prior knowledge. I also suggest online encyclopedias such as Encyclopedia Britannica. It offers general knowledge in many formats, such as articles, biographies, videos, and images. Use information effectively. Many learners struggle with organizing information, making connections, seeing important patterns or themes that repeat in learning materials. Learners' communication styles and strengths are also different. When avenues of expressions are restricted by any given parameters, it can deter students who may not feel comfortable participating. They're afraid to make mistakes in front of their peers, or maybe having oral language difficulties. The solutions: use multiple tools for communication software programs such as Prezi, Powtoons, which is a free animated video, could be some suggestions. Set guidelines for planning and process, and encourage students to design their own planners using templates from a Word document. There is a planner app that was suggested to me called iStudies with a Z. It's an iPhone app. Number 3, use templates. For some students, setting up the format for a written purpose is a highly cognitive task. I suggest supplying students with a template that contains the sections required for the assignment. If more support is needed, maybe add sentence starters. Again, I suggest Microsoft OneNote as a useful program for organizing information. Another app is Explain Everything. It's one of my personal favorites. It is an app that allows students to communicate their knowledge using images and voice recording. Use information ethically. Learners are greatly varied in the ways they process and understand information. Language related to copyright and fair use is laden with technical terms, rendering the text inaccessible even to students without learning disabilities. Solutions: promote expectations and beliefs by clearly teaching and scaffolding goal-setting strategies. Create cooperative learning groups to foster collaboration. New behaviors can be acquired by observing and communicating with others. Optimize value and authenticity by providing reminders, guides, and checklists that focus on self-regulated goals and elevate the frequency of self-reflection. For technology, I suggest citation programs such as RefWorks. This is known to everyone, but it is a web-based bibliography and database manager. It allows students to import references from text files or online databases and other various sources. There are many other programs available for free online. Turnitin, which is an originality checking and plagiarism prevention program, it checks student writing for citation mistakes or inappropriate copying. Most learning management systems like Blackboard and Canvas have a feature embedded that allows students to see the originality report of their submissions.
2 minutes left.
The sample lessons that are provided here by Vanderbilt University. When designing lesson plans, we need to look at the barriers regarding the goal, materials, and methods, and the assessment. Then design lessons aligned with UDL principles. For materials, UDL lessons include print, video with captioning, images, and audio descriptions, and if applicable, artifacts that could be touched. The traditional lesson depends only on the print textbook. For instructions, the UDL lesson delivers instructions in a variety of ways, such as whole group discussion, small group with teachers, small group with other students, and small groups with individual activities. A traditional lesson usually includes whole group instruction with independent work. A UDL lesson would include assessment strategy during whole group and small group with corrective feedback, Traditional lessons usually assess at the end of the unit or with a benchmark assessment. I would like to end with a departing thought borrowed from Whitney Rapp, the author of the book, Universal Design for Learning, 100 Ways to Teach All Learners. She says, ability and disability are socially constructed concepts. We as a society decided what makes someone able and what makes someone less able. Since we created these definitions, we can also change them. The time has come to change our definition of disability. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gigi. It's a wonderful
Thank you.
lecture. And I'd like to introduce the next speaker. Before that, I really like to introduce you, Helen Chang, who is my section secretary, LSN. I really appreciate you. You waved your hand. Okay, I really appreciate you who is running all the technology. Thank you, Helen. And then the next speaker is Ms. Caroline Smith. She will talk about universal design, making information literacy accessible. So please, Caroline.
Thank you. It's quite an honor to be here today. Hopefully you can all see my slides. And this presentation is about making information literacy accessible using the principles of universal design for learning. So in a public library, we may not have a formal information literacy program, but information literacy is embedded in many of our services. So here we have some examples. In a basic computer skills class, we may talk about information literacy. For example, when I taught a class on how to use the internet and search for websites, we also talked about how to tell who was behind the website, the date it was published, or how to tell advertisements apart from the content, and other skills that would help our patrons find reliable information. When we have guest speakers on a topic, in addition to that guest speaker providing reliable information, we could also have a display or a handout that we've created of resources. We've also done information literacy and programs for children and teens. And then we can apply information literacy in our daily interactions with our patrons. So that could be any reference question. If we help them search, we can talk about the information sources that we're using, assistance at public computers, and social media is a great way to share reliable information that connects to current events. And here are a few of the diverse needs of library patrons that we have to consider in order to make sure that information literacy is available to everyone. So do they have technology skills and access? We know that in our area, not everyone has a computer or internet at home. What languages do they speak? What are their literacy skills? Do they have community support and access to community services? Do they have childcare or family responsibilities that might prevent them from coming into the library at certain times? Do they have transportation needs? And then we also consider mental health, physical disabilities, and developmental and reading disabilities. And I will share some practical tips in just a moment, but here is a summary of those principles of universal design for learning. If you'd like more details about those guidelines, you can find that at udlguidelines.cast.org. So giving the learner multiple means of engagement is the why of learning, and that's a time to think, are they motivated to find an answer? Is the source of information relevant to them? And do they have some choices about how they receive the information? Then multiple means of representation is a time to think about literacy, accessibility, and the cognitive load, which I'll talk about more in just a minute. The third principle is action and expression, and that can relate to using technology in multiple formats. So here are some ways to reduce literacy barriers. This can be helpful for someone with a lower reading level, for someone learning the language, a variety of disabilities, and really everyone in between if you're making that information more clear. So offer multiple formats. That could be printed text, audio, a video, something online, or something physical in person. For example, if you have a printed flyer about an important program like summer reading, you could think about making it a video and sharing it that way as well. Then provide translations. Here where my library is, that means translating into Spanish or maybe having an American Sign Language interpreter, but that could be different depending on where you're located. You can use visuals in addition or instead of text. So one example of this, my library made some slides to show how to use the Zoom program to mute or use the chat. And we started out with lots of bullet points on the screen with paragraphs of text saying where to click. And we realized that we could replace that with just an arrow and a few words and a picture. And then while that shows on the screen, we also describe it. So we're offering that audio format as well. Another technique is to use a social story. This is often used with people with autism, and many social stories are for children, but there are also some for teens and adults. So social stories tend to have an illustration on each page, followed by short text explaining a situation. So the illustration on this slide is from a social story about COVID-19. It has a picture of a boy wearing a mask and then an explanation below that. If you'd like to learn more about social stories, you can go to the website carolgraysocialstories.com. And finally, you can check the reading level of any text or narration that you've written. And one website that will scan and provide the reading levels for you is webfx.com/tools/read-able. There's also a reading level checker built into Microsoft Word, but you have to turn it on through the settings. So to do that, you would go to File, choose Options, and then Proofing. So next, the cognitive load. This is the idea that while you're learning something new, the new information is held in your working memory of the brain. After you've had time to process it, hopefully you'll be able to add that to your long-term memory and your long-term knowledge. And if you've ever had the feeling of information overload, that's probably because you were given too much new information to process at one time, because it can be very taxing and tiring for our brains to hold information in that working memory. So here are some tips to consider. You can write in plain language, which is a way to make your writing clearer and more concise. And there's a website with lots of details on how to do this. That is plainlanguage.gov. It's useful in many different settings, and it also applies to those literacy barriers. You can separate information that your patron needs to know or needs to do from what is just nice to know. So that will help you decide what is most important for you to communicate, and it helps your patron remember what's important to remember, what's important to focus on. You can organize your information with headings. That makes it the text easier to scan and find the relevant parts. And for accessibility, you also want to make sure those headings are coded as headings. For example, in Microsoft Word, you can use the style menu to set up a heading instead of just making the font size bigger or bold. You can also introduce new concepts with scaffolding. So if you have a new concept, make sure your patrons have the background knowledge to understand it. So you may need to explain some terms or practice with a simpler concept and build that foundation. Finally, minimize distractions. So if you have an instructional video, it can be distracting to hear background music while someone's talking. That's also very difficult for the hard of hearing. So I would limit background music to just the very beginning or very end. You can have visual distractions as well. If you have lots of decorative images and colors on your slides, for example, and that's a good reason to stick with one font and one font size and be consistent with your visuals. So make it accessible to people with all types of disabilities. If you're posting content online, here in the United States, we have the WCAG 2.0 guidelines. Those are available at the website w3.org/WAI for the Web Accessibility Initiative. Some main things to remember are to provide alt text, alternative text, when you have an image posted online, to use heading structure, and to use clear or descriptive link text. So that means instead of saying click here and click here is the link, you could say library card application and have something to indicate where you're going. That will make much more sense to a screen reader. Visual information should have audio alternatives and audio should have visual alternatives. So here are some examples of both. Videos can include narration or audio description of the visuals on the screen. For documents, you can make them accessible to screen readers. So instead of, say, scanning a printed page and putting it up as a PDF, there are other ways to create that PDF so that it can be read with a screen reader. Or instead of posting a flyer onto Facebook with an image, you would have to provide some text in a different format. You can also provide assistive technology like a computer with a screen reader or magnifiers. Then some examples of visual alternatives for auditory information would be closed captions for videos, transcripts, or providing CART service, which is live captioning like we have here today in our webinar, and ASL or American Sign Language or other types of sign language interpretation. Technology skills and access. My first suggestion is don't make assumptions about whether someone has those skills or access to technology, and provide assistance when you can. Then provide alternatives to electronic information for those who prefer a physical or printed copy, or vice versa. When you're helping with a task, use that as an opportunity. 2 minutes? Okay. To teach those foundational skills and make technology easier to use. So show how to use Zoom features and things like that can make it a little easier. So I hope that you found something here that can be added to what you do or that you'd like to learn more about. These can all be good ways to improve your practice at the library, but I recommend thinking about how accessibility and universal design can become the standard for everyone in your library. So my library started working on this by forming an accessibility team last year. You could also start by having one person designated as an accessibility coordinator, or here in the United States, we have ADA coordinators as well. So here are some things that we've worked on. We have audited our library's facilities, programs, policies, media, and third-party services that we contract with. We've connected with people with disabilities for feedback. We're making the process of requesting accommodations easier, and we're providing staff training so that staff will be aware of different issues and can provide consistent service. Here are the resources that I mentioned in the presentation, and you'll receive a copy of that in the presentation slides. And finally, here's my contact information. I know we went through those tips quickly, so if you would like any further information, my email address is jcsmith@statelibrary.sc.gov, And I also have a subject guide with some information about accessibility, which is available at guides.statelibrary.sc.gov/inclusion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Yeah, I hope our webinar might be accessible, like what you said. And the next speaker is, third speaker, Miss Renee Grassi. She will talk about applying universal design in American public libraries. Renee, please.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Renee Grassi, and I'm so pleased to be invited by IFLA to speak with you today. Thank you to my friends and colleagues at IFLA and my fellow presenters for sharing such wonderful presentations, and all of you for being here today. Your dedication to learning about universal design is the first step forward in advocating for inclusion and accessibility to welcome and support everyone at our libraries. Today, I will talk about applying universal design to learning opportunities in public libraries. American public libraries are different from academic or university libraries, which serve students and professors in coursework and instruction, and more formalized learning. And public libraries serve all members of the community, not just students and professors. Public libraries do this through informal learning, through in-person and now virtual programs to support lifelong learning. These programs are free, open to the public, and sometimes don't require advanced registration. So public librarians don't always know the needs of the individuals coming to these programs. So librarians have a challenge and an opportunity to differentiate as much as possible the methods of instruction in the areas of engagement, representation, and expression. So I will be talking today about how public libraries can utilize a universal design in the development of informal learning opportunities. I will talk about the advantages of universal design for public libraries. I will give you an example of a program I co-created with a member of the deaf community about ASL, or American Sign Language. And even though this program was before the pandemic, I think there are learning and lessons that we can take now and going forward into the future. And I'll finish with my lessons learned and some advice for applying universal design in public libraries. We've learned a lot about universal design today already. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was the advantages of universal design in public libraries specifically. Public libraries in the United States are institutions for all people. In our ideology, we may not have always been places where all are welcome, but that is the spirit behind the ideology of libraries. And every day we work towards making the mission of that library more fulfilled in what we do. Universal design is in itself something to serve all users and all needs, and really can be applied to any aspect of public library work, whether it is a program, communication information, social media, collections, or technology acquisition. Universal design celebrates diversity and supports the diversity in our communities, and public libraries serve everybody in our communities, and our communities are rich with diversity, whether it is socioeconomic diversity, race or ethnicity, age, gender. We have a variety of users in our communities. And universal design helps promote independent use and participation. Libraries are here to support our users, but ultimately, universal design helps people acquire information and participate independently, which is a value that all of us strive towards, but especially people with disabilities may sometimes have a barrier to acquiring. And in general, universal design is integral to our ongoing equity and inclusion work. This work is not done. It is something that is continued every single day. And we know that there are barriers that exist for marginalized groups, and we need to make sure that we work every day to take those barriers down and work towards removing them. My library is a 9-branch public library system. We serve about 420,000 people, and we have a combination of suburban, rural, and urban geographic communities. We have 9 library locations. We serve 11 school districts, and we have a generous budget and sufficient staff for all of those locations. One of the programs we recently created with a community member was a program called Dakota County Library's American Sign Language Celebration. The goal behind this program was multi-tiered. We had a desire from one of our library communities in Farmington, Minnesota, to learn more about sign language. That library serves community members near a school serving deaf individuals. So there were a variety of people in that community who wanted to learn more. But we also had the benefit of a partner organization called Metro Deaf School. And this program, this person from Metro Deaf School helped us create the program, which was called All Are Welcome, American Sign Language Celebration for All Ages and Abilities. The goal was to explore deaf culture and talk about American Sign Language through stories, games, and crafts for all ages. And stories were read out loud in ASL and had voice narration and interpretation. We also invited some of our community partners to share resources about their organizations. We shared information about our libraries, and we had 2 local schools serving deaf individuals share their information as well. We had a variety of hands-on learning stations where people could go between the locations and complete activities such as button making, crafts. We had book displays and light refreshments because we were told food was important. It was also funded from a local, a state grant through the Minnesota Department of Human Services. How was this program universal design in theory? How did we apply it? Well, one of the things that I think is really important for public libraries in designing programs is that they should be co-created. This program was about the deaf community, and so it was important for me and the library not to assume we know or are the experts in the deaf community or American Sign Language. And so we partnered with a deaf individual and set up planning meetings with this person and hired an interpreter for these planning meetings to talk about how this program can welcome everybody and what the different components of that program should be for hearing, for deaf, and for hard of hearing individuals. We wanted the program to welcome everybody, and so bringing different groups together was important so that groups were not segregated. This was not a program just for deaf culture. This was not a program just for hearing culture. This was a program for everybody to come together and learn together. We looked at universal design principles when we were setting up our space, really making sure that we had improved sight lines because the deaf community really relies on relies on visual communication and visual information. So an open concept layout of our library was important. We created communication materials with text and visual, making sure that we are incorporating a variety of learners so that people knew how to navigate the library. And we also co-created a promotional video utilizing American Sign Language as the main feature, talking about the program, and featuring Matt, our presenter, talking about the program in ASL. We had captioning and voiceover, and it was described so that this video could be shared to anybody and they would know about the program. Our activities were open to all age groups and abilities. We provided sensory support so that if people needed to get up, move around, or fidget, they could do that. We changed, like I said, the layout of the space, and people could navigate in between the different activities on their own time. We provided choice in group activities, and ultimately the information, because this is an informal learning opportunity, the information shared was done in a variety of ways. Matt coordinated kinesthetic opportunities for learning. He modeled ASL and encouraged the group to move to different places of the room when they were answering a question about what their favorite sport was or their favorite subject in school. We provided tactile information with a lot of manipulatives as well as sensory input as well. We had books on display. We provided visual information such as—
2 minutes.
Thank you, Masako. We provided visual information through the projector. We enlarged the picture of the stories, and we also supported both ASL and hearing individuals with narration. And these are just some pictures. This is a picture of Matt telling the story with the story behind him. He's using ASL, and you can see we had a variety of age groups in the program. This is a picture of kids making crafts. They could create their own name tag, and a lot of our crafts had step-by-step instructions so that people can follow along by reading as well as by doing. And here's another example of a different craft station. We provided plates and supports for the tools, and we provided samples for the crafts so people can see, as well as signage so that they know how to navigate the room. And so my lessons learned: applying universal design, co-create the program as much as you can with your community. You are not the expert as a librarian, but you can connect with people in your community who can teach you, and you can learn from more things about serving our diverse community. Planning is important, so really taking the time to be intentional with your design of the program and thinking about all the things that you need to do, and don't be afraid to try something new and innovate. So finally, my advice for public librarians, really any librarians, is to learn how other libraries are applying universal design to programs and services. We can learn from each other. We're in an industry, we're in a profession all about lifelong learning, and let's continue learning about it. And also advocate for your colleagues to learn about universal design at your organization, because it's something that all of us should know, not just the ADA coordinator or the accessibility team at your library. All of us should understand how this benefits our whole community. So thank you very much. My website is reneegrassi.com. You can reach out to me there. And I just want to say thank you again for having me today.
Thank you very much. Great presentation. Thank you. And Mim, please. Please unmute.
Sorry. All right, thank you all. I myself enjoyed so much of your presentations. Now we get to some questions. And it's really important to know that information literacy is really not limited to academic libraries or for our users who are in school. It's really for everyone, and especially for people who are out of school. The most of adults, they're out of school, they still need to learn the skills. And UDL is really for all type of library services, instructional services that can use to improve accessibility. So we have an anonymous attendee who said, I teach an online async class that is organized by modules. And I open each new module weekly rather than all at once to avoid info overload. Is this anti-UDL in that it takes away student choice in terms of navigating the courses? Now, I want to hear the answers, which is not just like opinion, yes or no. Look at the barriers. Like we practice what we preach, barriers and how to mitigate any shortcomings in this format. And I think it's very important. Any volunteer from our panelists who wants to answer this?
I can chime in this one. I usually survey my students at the beginning of the course. I also teach an asynchronous course, and I always ask them, what do they prefer? Sometimes they want to just one by one for structure. My personal preference is just to open 1 week ahead, just 1 week ahead for those who want to just know what to expect. But I believe that open everything is too much.
Any addition to any shortcomings or barriers that you see, and then how UDL can be applied to overcome some of the shortcomings for asynchronized online instruction?
I think, I was gonna say-
No, go ahead.
Thank you, Gigi. I was going to agree with you and just say I really support what Gigi was saying. I think they're, not coming from an academic background outside of being a university student myself, I have less expertise than you. So I really want to support what your expertise is. I would say, universal design to an extent, flexibility and universal design are hand in hand. And every situation may be different. So I really like what you said about surveying your students and addressing the needs for every group, because that might be different depending on the students.
Thank you. All right, another question from audience, Caroline, another Caroline. I happen to know this Caroline, she's in Paris. She is also in our committee. Caroline's question is, could you please tell me if you use LibGuides designed with UDL principles? It's a very good question because a lot of web-based information, how do we keep in mind that certain principles should be applied? Any smiling panelist wants to start? Yes, Caroline.
Oh, I was just thinking I probably need to go back and review my LibGuide and add some of these principles. My LibGuides do tend to be just full of lots and lots of links to other resources that then can be designed with the principles. And I do a lot of one-on-one consultation, and that's when I apply more of those principles of organizing something in a way that's really relevant to that person's need, versus the LibGuide is a little bit of everything. I do my best to keep it organized and to, have that important headings and things like that I talked about, but it's a little room for improvement as well.
Thank you.
Well, I apologize for being a little bit faster with my presentation. I had to cram a lot of information in the 15 minutes, but I mentioned the website, the accessibility checker tool. It's called WAVE, and it's I think it's webaim.org. So if you are designing websites, LibGuides, or any other websites, it's really a good idea to pass it through Wave to see if there's anything missing. I haven't used the site myself. I just watched the demonstration, and it is actually very helpful. It comes with colors, red and green. This is accessible. This is not. So please try that. It's webaim.org.
Thank you, Gigi. It's very important because for people who are designing it may not think of the users. They may have some difficulties to read the screen or use device to read the screen in certain ways. For instance, if people don't put a period after a sentence, then the machine will keep running, reading it.
Absolutely.
It's difficult for people. So that Wave is really a check place for web designers for any LibGuides. Yes, Renee?
Yeah, I want to add to this. Our library recently hired a consultant who called T-Base Communications. They're out of Canada. And if your library has the means to do this, what this organization, this company does is provide human intervention for web accessibility remediation. So it uses both technology in like an app or a technology-based system to review the accessibility of your site and your online platform, but it also double checks with an actual person, because sometimes, and we all know technology is not perfect, sometimes those automatic checkers may miss something. And so I love WebAIM. I think that's a great suggestion. We had the opportunity to work with a consultant through a grant project, and they gave us a full assessment of all of our online platforms. And I realize that's a very in-depth, thorough process, but we learned so much from this experience. So when possible, working with organizations or consultants that can help you learn more about web accessibility, because everything's online now and we should really make sure it's as accessible as possible.
I also just wanted to add that we have a lot of different staff in our organization that edit LibGuides. And so that's also a continual training to remind people to always add alt text to your images, to use good descriptive links, and to use the heading styles versus just making your font bigger. So those things we are continually reminding everyone about.
Yes, great, thank you. And there is a question asking, can universal design of learning that framework apply to all types of libraries? The short answer is definitely yes. That's the purpose for our webinar. And we have people from experts from public libraries showing that. So it's not limited to academic libraries. So next one, is very good question. As a result of COVID-19, we would have to offer library classes online for the first time. Yes, we have to be on board with that. Our classes are usually interactive. So the question is, anyone has tips and advice that you should offer? I think Gigi also covered, like comparison. If you don't apply, what will happen? If you apply, what can improve in terms of accessibility? You want to say something?
I mean, if you present information, I mean, I'm not sure what literacy issues are, like different language speakers or learning disabilities. Yes, there are modifications for each one of those. For instruction, for example, presenting the instruction in more than one format is really a good idea. Visual learners, they need to see. And actually, even if you are a low-tech school, one of the teachers that I know was teaching life science class. She brought to her classroom some seeds and pods, and she put them on a table. Students came in, they touched them, they opened them, they wrote notes about them in their journals. It was a UDL lesson with no technology. So I guess it depends on what your students can and cannot do. There are so many creative ways that you can put your instruction into to get it to get them to understand what you're talking about. And I'm a huge fan of social learning. Putting them into small groups, they learn from each other more than they learn from you. So it's a great idea to pair them together. And of course, the feedback is really important. Give them continuous and corrective feedback. And this, I believe this is really good. It works for grade students, and it works for my graduate students at the university.
Min, do I have a quick moment to add something from public library perspective?
Sure.
We are now offering take and make kits at our library and pairing that with virtual programming experiences. So our adult librarian is working with a vendor who teaches art and craft classes. And you know, hands-on learning is so important for so many learners, that experiential learning, as is the visual. And public libraries right now are struggling with in-person programs. So maybe think about offering kits of materials, giving them out in a safe way, and then offering a virtual live demonstration, bringing those people together, creating that community, and then learning about how to put it together.
Wonderful. Yes, I think advocacy is very important because in the library field, we haven't really talked about UDL yet. It's more user initiated. You kind of understand their needs first and then design it to meet their needs. For instance, in our webinar, we have a questionnaire ask people if they have any technological barriers or any other needs. We have kind of a questionnaire to start with. So for any kind of instructions, librarians probably should learn from what is UDL, like take away from today's webinar, how to apply it. There are many things to learn from the framework, first of all, and then to practical issues like tools, etc. This is a beginning point. We will, from here, we will build many resources, hopefully, to help each other, to do it better, to reach more people, help more people in their needs for information literacy instruction. Misako, do you have any announcement for us? Or you're muted. Misako, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Good discussion, and I really enjoyed it. I forgot everything what I have to do, but now we will finish it. Already 1 hour is over. I'm sorry. So it's a good webinar, and we learned a lot. I think you will learn more after we posted our recording to IFLA website. Actually, presentation of 3 speakers for today, their presentation is already available at IFLA LSN website, so could you access to there? Thank you very much for attending here today.
And
so
also we will review the questions, and then if they are very interesting questions, we will ask our panelists to answer them and post them on the web as well.
Yes, and we have another webinar, same webinar, chaired by Nancy. Nancy?
In format, but we will have 3 different speakers next week. There's still time to register for that webinar if you would like, and just go to the, go back to wherever you registered before. I'm trying to remember where it is right now. And you can register for next week's as well. It's on the IFLA website. That's where you should go, under events, and you can register for our webinar next week.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, and another speakers, not the same speakers. Maybe
Yeah, we have.
You have opportunity to listen.
Speakers.
Yeah, that's right.
More from academic and also higher education, teaching and course design point of view. So different perspectives.
Yes.
great information for librarians to know as we put UDL into practice.
Yes, we will learn more next week. Thank you very much for attending here, and thank you very much for speakers.
Thank you.
And
My
Nancy
pleasure.
and Helen. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And it's very hard to say goodbye, I can see.
I think Helen needs to close this out.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think so. Yes, please.
Thank you, Helen, to stay up so late. And then Masako. Bye, everyone.
Yes.
Bye.
Until next one.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.